Hey everybody, it's Cody Martens here with Luminary Agent, and you're listening to the Luminary Agent Podcast. This is episode 2 of the Luminary Agent Podcast, and I am joined, as always, by my fabulous co-host and our content director here at Luminary Agent, Sarah Jacquier. Sarah, say hey.
Hey everybody.
So today's topic, we are going to be talking about real estate planning. Business planning, actually, because as a realtor, you own a business, and every business has a plan or should have a plan for how they're going to spend their dollars, budgeting, what activities they're going to be doing, the marketing they're going to be doing. And this is a subject that obviously is very timely because it's the beginning of the year, but also is something that I see so many agents don't do. They're not even really in the mindset of treating their business like a business. And the fact of the matter is that it is one. And as a business, you have revenue and you have expenses and you have to account for that. So Sarah and I thought it would be a really awesome topic to talk about today.
Yep. So even if you're listening to this and it's the middle of the year, this is something you should definitely do at any time if you don't already have a solid business plan.
Yeah, and if you already have one or have created one, I hope this podcast is a prompting to you to take a look at it. So if you're listening to this some other time during the year, pull out your business plan and see how you're doing. Check your stats, check the plan that you put in place, and see how well you're doing there. So we're going to go over 4 main things today, right, Sarah?
Yep.
So
let's jump in.
Yeah, let's just jump right in. The first thing we're going to talk about is the wonderful world of basically budgeting.
Everybody's favorite topic. Let's start with that. So that everybody listens from the beginning.
Instead of tunes us out and is like, want, next.
Budgeting. Yep.
I know, right?
Move on.
But, this is really important because as a business, you kind of have to have a budget. Like you have to have a general idea of what you're going to make in the year or what your goal is to, that you want to make. And then also like what expenses are going to come out of that so that you know what your take home is.
It's really hard to plan for, if some marketing opportunity comes up or some other opportunity comes up and you want to do it and you don't even know what your expenses and your income are. It's really hard to know if that's something that you can afford, if it's something that you should even be spending your money on, if you don't know those basics. And
I think the biggest flaw that I think we see a lot of agents make, in particular in this area, is they treat their commission check like a paycheck. And they don't treat it like revenue coming into the business. And that is a very, it changes your way of thinking about things. Because with revenue, that's not your money to spend. Like it comes into the business, there are expenses that go out of it. Maybe you have payroll, maybe you have marketing expenses, advertising expenses, and then you might have your own paycheck or whatever is left over is your paycheck. But if you're treating your commission check like a paycheck, then all of those expenses, they're basically, it feels like they're coming out of your own personal wallet, right?
Well, it's because you see that commission check as a windfall that, not only pays your bills, but maybe takes you to Disney World or on some awesome vacation. And nobody wants to pay bills instead of go on vacation.
Right. That's really true. That's super true. And one thing that I know, for me as a business owner, knowing that like I have set my own salary, and that can be whatever I want it to be. But once setting that salary, then I kind of have a guaranteed amount that I know is coming to me, so I can base my personal budget off of that. And then the revenue that comes in from the business, I now don't feel so bad about spending $500 a month or $1,000 a month on a marketing campaign or, running Facebook ads, because I am not comparing that against my mortgage, and my car payment.
It's not directly coming out of your personal account.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's
painful.
Yeah, I think that's a big differentiator too. We had a great interview last year with Shalise Austin, who was the one of the co-owners of Habit Real Estate, where I have my real estate license, and she's since moved on to start her own real estate brokerage. But we did a great interview with her, and one of the big things that she said as advice to agents was make sure that you have a separate account that is for the business, because then you're not commingling your funds, and you're not constantly like just having that mindset of the fact that this is business and this is income and expenses. It's just every other business has to do that, and real estate is no exception, right?
Yeah. Well, now I think we should go on to everybody's favorite money topic, which is taxes.
Yay.
The very best. Tax time is coming up, so. That
is true. And I think that, taxes is obviously just another business expense. And taxes is always one of those great things in real estate where it's like comes up at the end of the year, and usually you haven't saved for it, and then it turns into this like big to-do. And if you can back into those numbers, it just makes such a big difference. Like, there's a spreadsheet actually that we have that's really awesome, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes because I think it's really important for people to be able to download and go through this. And it's basically, if you want to make $100,000 a year, you want to net yourself $100,000 a year, here's how much you need to make in commission to actually make that happen. Because you've got 20% in taxes, you've got anywhere from 5 to 10% in marketing expenses. If you have an assistant, then you've got those expenses coming out as well. The money that you spend on every real estate listing that you get, the money that you spend on closing gifts, all of those different things, to kind of back into it. It's a really awesome thing. So we'll make sure that we link to that. But what are some of your other thoughts on taxes, Sarah, and how agents can navigate that?
Yeah. So I used to freelance, and so I had to pay not only regular taxes that any business pays, but I also had to pay self-employment taxes, which, is another 15%. And so I just I guesstimated based on past years, and I started saving that money in a separate account, where you could, just have a separate savings account where that money goes. And some years I had a little bit left over, which was great. I got to put that back in my business account, but some years it was right on. And it was really nice to know that I was just setting that aside every month instead of having a painful bill at the end. So I think it's really helpful if you budget for that monthly.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit easier to manage.
Yeah. I know that you're on payroll. I have myself on payroll too, because I'm the kind of person that if the money's sitting in my account and we ended up needing it for something, I'll take it, because sometimes you're in a bind and you're like, I need that money. But if I've had that taken out of my paycheck and then that money's gone, I can't, I can't use it even if I need it. And I know I personally need that. So
yeah. Well, and I also think it's really smart to meet with an accountant, make sure that you're maximizing your tax savings, but also that you have an idea of what's coming so that you can save adequately.
Yeah, that was one of the big things that I started doing that really made a big difference was my tax accountant actually going to him mid-year, like in October basically, and saying, I have a pretty good idea of how the year is going to shake out. Let's pre-plan, give me some ideas of what this is going to look when we file our taxes. And that's really made a huge difference just in feeling more prepared when April comes around, or, March when business taxes are due.
Yeah, that's so smart. And most accountants are pretty free in October. So
yeah, they super are. Cool. So. Well, let's move on and talk about business planning in terms of marketing. I'm going to kind of let you lead this one a little bit because I think that you have a really good handle on, I think, overall marketing and scheduling out for a year, because it's really what you do for our clients,
Yeah.
So take it away.
Yeah. So I schedule things for our clients, and I also schedule topics for our internal tasks and project management. So I just created all of our topics for the next year. And so, it's so important to know what the few things that you're always going to do are. If you just decide that you're always going to do them, you never have to sit and tether, am I going to post to social media this week? Am I going to write a blog post? Because usually the answer is going to be, well, probably not, But if you decide ahead of time, no, this is just what's going to happen, these are the things I'm going to do this year, then it's a lot easier to save mental energy.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's the key, right? Like basically you're just trying to do everything that you can to set yourself up for success and make sure that when the time comes that you're removing any friction that might be built up that's going to prevent you from doing that. I have to think of a topic. Well, there's a piece of friction. Well, if I plan that ahead of time, then I don't have to, when it comes time to do it, I don't have to do it. I don't know when I'm going to get it done. Well, if you know when it's due, then you can plan ahead of time. It's just a matter of like removing the friction to getting that stuff done. But you made an excellent point, which is it's something that you have to decide that you're going to do no matter what, right? Like you have to make that commitment for yourself that like, I'm going to do social media. I'm going to do a blog this year. I'm going to, work on doing a video, or like us doing this podcast. Like, this is like a non-negotiable thing that we have decided we're going to do. And magically it's getting done,
Yep. Well, I think you really have to first make that decision, but then make it as convenient as it can possibly be, because we will do so much to avoid inconvenient things that everything you can do, like picking topics in advance, having specific days of the week that things are due, will make it so much easier. And for some people, that might be having some kind of person that they're accountable to. Maybe it's your audience. Maybe you're saying, look, I'm going to post once a week. Make sure I post once a week. I think we feel responsibility with this podcast to have it come out once a week.
Yeah.
So I think when you create outer expectations, that helps a lot as well.
Yeah, that's super true. That's super true. And we kind of talked a little bit before the show about, picking the 3 to 4 things that you're always going to do, and then just always doing those things. And I think that those things are like the basic things, right? Like client parties, quarterly phone calls, blogging, social media. I mean, maybe blogging is not something that you are always going to do or that you think might not benefit your business, but like social media absolutely should be. And I think blogging kind of goes hand in hand with that. I feel like,
I think blogging just makes social media easier.
So much easier, right? I mean, we fill a lot of our content calendars with stuff from our blog posts, which makes a huge difference.
It does.
So what are some other, business planning, marketing things that can help, like, remove that friction, make things easier, or, just things people should have planned out, at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. So I think that So we have a content calendar and a project management system. It's pretty simple, but we write down all of the topics ahead of time. And that's really helpful because then we can be thinking about them in advance. And sometimes I'll bookmark something that I read online, or I'll note an interview or a podcast and be like, hey, I need to remember this. So I'll just make a note of it where we store all of our topics, and then I can come back to it easily. So in that way, you're getting a little research done in advance, which is really helpful.
Smart. That's really smart.
And then scheduling, thinking, hey, I want to get this many social media posts out of this blog post. And that very well may vary on the blog post. Some are going to have much more social content than others, but saying, hey, I want to make a graphic out of this, or I just want to post, a little snippet of this. I want to do a video. There are so many ways that you can utilize that research and the work that you've already done. So that most of your time is going into the blog post, and then you're just remixing it for other mediums. Yeah.
And this obviously, like, kind of, I think our aha moment for this was when we got Gary V's content distribution slides that he had online. I mean, that thing is seriously fire.
It's a little crazy.
Like, it's insane, that he can take one piece of content and turn it into 30 different pieces of content. But man, it just makes such a difference. Like this podcast, like we record obviously this podcast in video. so that we can use it on, have it on YouTube. So if people want to watch it on YouTube, it's there for them. If people want the audio podcast, in iTunes, then it's there for them. If we say something that's really awesome or makes a great snippet, then we have the ability to cut that up and turn it into an Instagram post, or a Facebook post. And we're always looking for ways to redistribute that content to basically save us time. Like,
it's just smart planning. Get the most out of your time.
Well, and get the most out of your work too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, you're going to take all that work to put that blog post together, put that podcast together, put that video together, like get as much mileage out of that thing as you can.
Yeah. And like we talked about last week, you reach different people in different places. So they may never go to your website. They may never go to your YouTube channel, but they might see you on social media. And so it's another way to get exposure to more people.
Yep. I want to be everywhere for everyone in any way that is convenient for them, right?
And I just want to say again, reiterate what I said last week, which is that you don't need to worry that people are seeing too much of the same thing. Just keep getting it out there. It's okay to get the same topic all over the place and then come back to it a couple months later. People will not remember. The important thing is that they're going to remember who you are.
That's true. It's funny. Somebody, one of our clients the other day, they said, I just posted something like that on my Instagram story, a couple weeks ago, and I don't want to repeat myself. And I told him, I said, I don't remember what I posted on my own Instagram story yesterday, let alone what somebody else posted a couple of weeks ago, Like if you're saying it in a new way, or even if it's the same thing, but it's still funny, like, repost away, mazel tov.
It's the nature of an Instagram story. They're gone in 24 hours. So they're meant to be quick and they're meant to be gone. So exactly. I don't think that's something people need to worry about.
Yeah. And one thing that we had written down to mention here was being weary of shiny object syndrome. And one thing that I think is really cool about doing business planning as it relates to marketing is it helps you actually kind of stay away from the shiny object syndrome, because you have your plan in place, you know what you're going to do, and it just makes it so much easier because you you already have your plan. And sure, like you should look at potential new things always. And there might be one or two things in a year that you're going to give a shot to. And if you've been budgeting, like we talked about in the first part, you might have a little extra money to be able to try something new once a quarter. But you don't want it to replace the fundamental 3 to 4 things that you're always going to do, right?
Well, yeah, and I think the big difference is that when you've decided what you're already going to do, and you focus on that, you're doing things in a very measured and calculated way. And I know we've both talked to people where it just feels like they're grasping at straws. They're grasping at any and every idea that comes their way, but they're not really executing those ideas. So I think it becomes kind of frenetic and desperate, and it's so much better if you can make those decisions about new things from a very measured and rational point of view, because then you don't end up wasting your money and your time.
Well, and how do you measure anything that is that, sporadic or that is grasping at straws? And it's also so short term, I guess, like you're just looking for that next sale or that next thing. And I mean, your real estate business can be a really long career. So you should try to do it right from the start, like get that referral marketing part down so that you are always going to stay in touch with these, your past clients or people in your database for the rest of your life.
Well, and even if you didn't, start it that way, you said do it right from the start, but even if you haven't, it's never too late to start building your database the right way. It's not something you should put off, but you should do it now.
The best day to do it was yesterday, and the second best day to do it is today, right?
Right.
Yep, that's true. So the third thing that we wanted to talk about as far as business planning, and this is something that you kind of you should go back and do if you haven't done it in previous years, because I think it'll be very telling. But then it's also something that you should do throughout the year, and that is the topic of sales, like tracking and measuring your sales both past sales as well as the sales that you have throughout the year. And it's really nice to be able to have at least an idea of how much of your business is going to come from listings and how much of it is going to come from buyers, because that will determine the type of marketing that you do. And it also may determine the type of expenses that you have. If you do way more listings than you do buyers, well, listings generally are more expensive because you have the marketing costs associated with marketing that house. And just also being able to track, your not only your lead sources, but also your close ratios, as well as the information about your sales. And let's dig into that a little bit, because you need to track your lead sources. Every time that somebody's referred to you or that a lead comes in, you need to be marking that somewhere. And I don't care if it's in a spreadsheet. Like, I would appreciate if it was in a spreadsheet, like the person's name, the date they were referred to you, or the date that they were a lead that came into your inbox, and like where they came from, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, that's so important, because you need to know where your business comes from. Like,
well, and back to this really goes back to what we were just talking about, because if you don't know where your business is coming from, you don't know how to spend your money to get more of it. And that's part of that shiny object syndrome. You may run after something and spend a lot of money on something that isn't going to be a main source of business for you. So when you're tracking how you get your business, it helps you make smarter decisions about where to put your resources.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally true. And also it's interesting because I think that our lead sources are often not as accurate on paper as they are in our head. And a lot of time people think, oh, I get a lot of business from open houses, or I've gotten a lot of business from this. And I've literally had agents that have calculated it all up and they're like, wow, like way more of my business came from this source than came from that source, And I think also that the longer you're in the business, the more your business comes from referrals from your database of past clients and people that you know. And so kind of back to like the marketing thing, when we're saying like 3 to 4 things that you're always going to do forever, those a few, like one of those 3 to 4 things should always be staying in touch with your database, because that's how your that's where your business is going to come from. All successful agents, like over time, that is always, far and above their number one source of business, right? It's just so important to start that. And even if you don't start it from day one, like starting it today, and like I have recently started reaching out to people in my own sphere to help them be reminded that I'm in real estate as well. And it's been a slow process because I have to introduce myself to a lot of people, and, I don't want to just start bombarding them with emails. So it's a slow process of texting them and kind of getting back into their lives a little bit before I make that leap. And that's something that's actually been really helpful as well. So anyway, that's kind of off topic maybe a little bit, but I do think that it's really important that even if that's not something that you've done in the past, it's something that you can still start doing, because it will affect your business in the future.
Yeah, it will for sure affect your planning. So it's really smart.
What are some other things that you think agents should track as far as sales go?
We talked about, before this show, we talked about tracking sales prices and listings and buyers and ratios and all of those important points of data that you need.
Yeah. And, one reason why I love doing that is, it's really nice to be able to have your own stats and to be able to say, I help my buyers save an average of $5,000 on their purchase, because you have that data to like know this was the listed price, this is what we got it for, and be able to know that information. And the same thing with listings, like I was able to negotiate, X over the original asking price, or we were able to sell it for 98% of the asking price. Just being able to know those numbers. And honestly, for a buyer or a potential seller, like those numbers might be kind of arbitrary to them because they have no basis of comparison. But the
Right.
fact that you know those it shows that you're a professional and
Yeah.
that you want to track your business and that you understand that those things are important.
Yeah. It just gives you some extra credibility.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So
Yep.
it gives you a leg up.
Yeah, exactly. So the last thing that we wanted to talk about was kind of your daily and monthly activities and planning for basically your time, right? So planning,
How you allocate it.
yeah, how many days a week are you going to work? How many weeks of vacation are you going to take? And what are your most high level activities that you can be doing as a realtor? And, this is a really important one because when you track your days and your hours and how much time you're going to work based on how much income you're going to make, it helps you understand what your hourly rate is as a realtor.
Yeah. Well, and it helps you make decisions about what you want to be doing with your time. You might be surprised to find that you're spending too much time on something and that it's not a very good use of your time. You may never want to spend 4 hours writing a blog post. That may never be a good use of your time. But unless you're tracking that, it's really hard to know that.
Yeah.
And then you can make the decision, hey, I really should hire that out so that I can spend that 4 hours with clients,
Absolutely. And you don't have to lose your voice or lose the you when you hire stuff out like that, because do a 45-minute interview with your content writer so that they can extract from you the information that's in your brain so that it has your points in the blog post. But that's 45 minutes of your time versus 4 hours of your time to write it and edit it and get it put up.
Yeah.
And especially if you're paying $50 or $60 for a, really long, nice, well-written blog post, which is even still kind of a pretty good deal. If you're worth $85 or $90 or $110 an hour, and you know that because you've done your business plan, it makes a lot of sense to pay somebody who's better at that less than it would cost you to do it.
Yeah. And I don't really know any realtors who are, graphic designers and writers and web developers. You shouldn't be all of those things. You're a realtor and that's what you're good at. So it makes sense to focus on that and hire out some of those other pieces. And we're not saying that you shouldn't keep your voice. You still need to be present on social media. Nobody else can film you talking into the camera. That's really important. You still have to be you, but there are a lot of those pieces that can easily be hired out, especially how things are now and how easy it is to get freelancers that you never even meet with face to face. I mean, it's really simple to hire out some of those really time consuming things.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think that one thing that's kind of scary with hiring out too is you don't ever always know what you're going to get. But one of the great things about it is that, if they're freelance and you're just saying, hey, we're just going to try this out, it's $200 or something, and it's either well worth the money or it's a lesson learned. There's no way to know, and we've definitely gone through, we've gone through some people who, didn't live up to the expectation that we had. And that's fine. You keep working until you find somebody that does work really well.
Yeah.
So, but being able to track those activities and knowing what your hourly rate is and knowing how much time you spend, it just makes such a difference with you being able to plan out what you're going to do and what you're going to have somebody else do. Like you said, you're not a graphic designer, you're not a web designer, you're also not a home inspector, you're not, a loan officer, you're not a title person, you're not a radon inspector. You hire these professionals to do these things for your clients, and you should be doing the same thing for yourself as well so that you can focus on your most value-added activities.
And I also want to mention here, I think it's so important to know yourself and to be honest about that. If you are never going to have the initiative to find and post social media topics, it's really good to just admit that to yourself. Be like, you know what? I'd like to think I'm going to do this, but I'm not. Let me find someone to help me do this. You may still be involved in the process, but other people can help you really get it going, help you schedule, help you with some of the content. If you're someone who loves being on social media all the time and that's what you want to do, even if it's not the very highest making money use of your time, that's okay. It's good to accept that and utilize it to your advantage. Yeah. I don't think you should put yourself in a box just because other realtors are doing something.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's that self-awareness piece, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's just, I mean, that's a really important thing that you said, you know, knowing what you're good at and what is worth your time. And I mean, I would even argue though that social media and making yourself present on social media, that's, I mean, a form of networking and staying in touch with people. And that honestly, really? I mean, for an agent, that is like the game. You know,
it is pretty critically important.
The relationship
in 2019.
Yeah. I mean, the relationship in general is so important, and social media is playing such a huge part of that. It just, I mean, it's something that you have to do. But if you month after month aren't producing enough content or any content, it's time to have a good look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe this isn't something that I can do on my own. Yeah. I know that, I mean, I've leveraged you big time to hold me accountable, you know, and I've also delegated some stuff to you that I know that I can't do. Like you write most of our blog posts because it is just, I know myself enough to know that while I'm a good writer, it takes too much mental energy for me to get a blog post out where it's something that's just second nature to you. And so we've leveraged each other's strengths in that way, you know? So I just think that's something that's super important. So, do you have anything else to add? I think we kind of went through most of what we had to say about this topic.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good. Just think it's really important to, not make excuses about why you're not doing something, but to be really honest about what needs to happen to get your business to where you want it to be.
Super, super true. Well, I think this is episode 2. Wow.
Episode 2.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Luminary Agent Podcast. We really appreciate your support. And if you are listening to this podcast and found it valuable, we would so appreciate a rating on iTunes. Ratings on iTunes, that is like the SEO search engine of iTunes podcasts. And if we get more ratings, then we are able to get more listeners, which means that we can bring bigger guests onto the show, which is definitely something that we're going to start doing, bringing guests onto the show and having top realtors share their insights. So we're really excited about that. We would just so appreciate that. It would mean so much to us.
And be sure to share the podcast with any other agents.
True. That's right. Share. Tell everyone about it, whether it's great or not. If it's great, tell everyone about it. If not, then be quiet. No, I'm just kidding.
If you have feedback, give it to us. We'll make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been Cody Martens, founder and CEO of the Luminary Agent.
And I'm Sarah Jacquier, our content director.
And thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Hey!